Howdy, Homo sapiens. So I've noticed something for a while when I've been in debates or discussions about politics with people. I'm so used to seeing this tactic used, as well as using it myself, that it has gone unnoticed by me for I don't know how long. I was only recently able to put my finger on it. And here it is. Bad is not a zero-sum game. Let me explain. We are so used to fighting over which candidate or party is the lesser of two evils that we tend to argue the same way when it comes to political movements. Namely, we all seem to be under the delusion that when someone points out something bad going on within our political movement, it is then a valid and logical retort to point out something bad on the opposing side. But this makes no sense. For example, a right-winger says, "Wow, look at the identity politics on the left." And then a left-winger replies with, "Oh yeah, well, what about Trump's white male identity politics?" What does one have to do with the other? If we agree that identity politics are bad, then one side's identity politics is completely irrelevant as a defense of the others. In this case, identity politics is not a zero-sum game. Nor is lying, nor is toxicity, nor is anything bad that develops or is practiced within an ideological movement. One side's bad does not cancel out the other sides. This happens with religious arguments as well. Someone might make a statement like, "There's a problem with Islamic violence in the world," and then another will retort with something like, "Well, what about Christian violence?" As if this cancels out the Islamic violence, or vice versa. Violence is not a zero-sum game. There's plenty of violence for all religious movements to enjoy. For those who don't know, the concept of a zero-sum game is when there is a limited resource between two parties. To give more to one side is to automatically reduce the amount to the other side, and vice versa. We all have this strange idea that between the two major ideologies or political movements, left and right, that things like lying, toxicity, or just bad stuff in general is a zero-sum game. It's not. To point out something like extremism on one side is not to forgive it or downplay it on the other. Both sides can be bad. Also, and this is very important, both sides don't have to be equally bad. In fact, in any given aspect of bad, both sides will never be perfectly even. So pointing out the other side's worse doesn't cancel out your side's bad. Now, I'm on the left. When I point out problems on the left to other people on the left, maybe extremism or toxicity, they inevitably point out something bad on the right. What? What does the right have to do with problems on the left? And of course, I've seen this when I point out bad on the right to conservatives. They respond with pointing out bad on the left. This tactic is very similar to whataboutism, or tu quoque, that is, the appeal to hypocrisy. This is a form of the ad hominem fallacy. It involves dodging an accusation by pointing to the other person's hypocrisy, or in this case, the other side's hypocrisy. We are so used to doing this in everyday arguments or debates that it has become second nature to us. Here's a common example. How many times have you had this argument with someone you're sharing a living space with? You say something like, "You're really messy. You didn't clean up after you fixed your food." Then they retort with something along the lines of, "Well, you left your clothes all over the floor." What the other person just did was to commit the appeal to hypocrisy fallacy, pointing out that you are a hypocrite to avoid your accusation. This is extremely common, but nonetheless a very odd argument to make, because a person can be a hypocrite and still make a valid argument, even if that makes them a hypocrite. One person's bad actions do not cancel out or reduce the harm of another person's. In this example, it's as if there's only so much messy to go around. When you pointed out the other person's messy, they acted as if by pointing out your messy, that somehow reduces theirs. As if messy between two people is a zero-sum game. Both parties can be messy, and the amount of one person's messy is not affected by the other person's messy. Now, in the case of a choice between two candidates, this way of arguing is valid. In this case, each person is arguing that their favorite candidate is the lesser of two evils. Assuming that there are only two feasible candidates, then each candidate's flaws are relative to the flaws of the other. So when a person responds to an accusation towards their candidate of, say, corruption by pointing out corruption on the opposing side, That's a relevant accusation because they are claiming that the other candidate is more corrupt than theirs. The problem is that we are so used to seeing the two political parties this way that we confuse the lesser of two evils argument with making an appeal to hypocrisy when our favored political movement is attacked. Here's the important thing. There's enough bad to go around. There's enough crazy or toxicity to go around. The other side's bad does not cancel out your side's bad. And yes, even the other side's worse does not cancel out your side's bad. The problem is most of the time we are so scared to give any ground to admit that our side has any problems at all because we think by doing this we are forgiving the other side's problems. This isn't true. And this all goes back to the same issue, the biggest problem people have today. We do this because we have our identity intertwined with an ideological group we associate with. To admit a problem in our group is to admit a problem with ourselves. To be intellectually honest, we have to force ourselves to detach our identity from our ideology if we were to honestly examine it. Next time someone points out something bad on your side of politics, take a step back. If you think what they're accusing your side of would be unacceptable on the other side, then it's unacceptable on yours. At least admit it to yourself, if not to the other person. But if you can, set an example. Admit it out loud. They're more likely to follow. But what do you think? Have you seen others do this? Have you caught yourself doing it? Let me know below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, stay doubtful. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please drop a like. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe. There's a lot more to explore.